I know that you've coined around here like finger wagging from the grave, right? It's like after you've passed on, being like, okay, here's your inheritance, but you got to do a list of things.
And if your kid came up to you right now, it doesn't matter how old your kid is, 20 years old, 40 years old, they come up to you and they say, hey, Dad, can I have 500 grand? You'd be like, beat it, sucker. I'm not giving you that kind of money. Like, what do you even need it for? But if you die, right, a lot of times people will say, hey, I'm worth $1 million and I've got 2 kids, so they each get 500 grand. You are going to just give them a wild sum of money at some point, but while living, you wouldn't have done it. So why do we do it at death? It's kind of a strange thing, right?
Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Saturday State of Mind. I'm here joined with Mike Panico, as always. And Mike, today we're going to talk about a mess, a big old mess. I'm not talking about your bedhead.
Great. So what kind of mess are we talking about, Jess?
Before we get into that, if you haven't taken a moment to subscribe to our channel, please do that now. Now, without further ado, we're talking about inheritance messes.
Okay, so we're going to try to figure out how to not leave an inheritance mess.
Whoa, nobody likes a stain on the carpet.
I don't know what you're implying there, but let's just move past that.
All I'm saying
I think we're talking about a legal mess.
Oh, yeah. Nobody wants that, or the headache that comes sometimes with an inheritance if you didn't do the proper estate planning.
You didn't set up in advance. Well, this is pretty easy. If you didn't do any planning, something's guaranteed for your beneficiaries, and that's probate.
Yep, absolutely. What exactly is probate, other than a scary word?
Man, if attorney Liz Nolan were here, she'd probably tell you something to the effect of probate is there to serve as a catch-all to solve for disputes that happen between beneficiaries when somebody in their family is gone. Because absent that mechanism, it would be a free-for-all. Everybody would leap over the fence after they got the death certificate notice and say in the newspaper, and they start pillaging your house, and people could just lay claim to whatever they want. Of course, we don't live in a barbaristic society here, so there are rules in place. Once society catches wind that you're gone, what the state does, effectively, they put a hold on everything. They freeze it, right? And it's not just to make sure that those like burglars jump into the house and start stealing stuff. It's also to give time and place for creditors to put a claim against your stuff. Because when you're gone, you might have racked up some serious medical bills. Maybe there's some outstanding Visa debits that you've got there, or maybe some outstanding balance that you owe to Amazon. Who the heck knows? But the idea being is a state saying, hold up, you're gone. I know there's a line of people interested in the money. We have to go through an orderly process to determine who is entitled to what.
I don't want any part of this, Mike. This all sounds like such a nightmare. Also, how do you owe money to Amazon?
I don't know. Can't you buy things on credit?
Yeah, maybe there's probably Amazon credit card for that. I don't know. I wouldn't know. I never shop at Amazon. So if you've gone through estate planning now, maybe you've like done a will. There's a lot of those templates you can do on your own. You shouldn't have to worry about probate, right?
The thing about a will is that it guarantees probate. So
guarantees?
It guarantees it,
I think that's the opposite of what we're looking for here.
So a will is just simply a set of instructions that says, here's who gets what after I'm gone. So, so-and-so can get the family photo album, and somebody else can get my bank account, and the car goes this direction, and I donate my sofa to whatever. The will, though, isn't treated like, stone tablets being brought down from Mount Sinai. It's just a set of directives that may or may not be honored. Remember, the state has frozen all of your stuff. They're looking at who's making a claim. Is it kids? Is it nieces, nephews, neighbors, whoever? They're also looking at the creditors, and they're looking to see effectively what is fair based on what you've written. They're also looking to see if when the will was written, if you were under duress, if you were of sound mind. So that will can be contested for a number of different reasons. But regardless of how well it was written, or regardless of its intention, or even regardless of whether or not the state's going to honor all of the directions inside of it, you're still going to have to go through probate. And the main consequences of that, I think, are a couple things. Number one is your stuff is frozen. So if as a beneficiary, you really need that money, or you want to sell the house while the market is like still up and you want to get the best possible price, with probate, you don't really have that leisure. You have to wait for the year to elapse before assets are released from probate and become accessible to either sell or to spend. So that's one of the consequences. The second consequence is expense. This is time consuming. So at the very least, you might have to take time off of work to attend probate court, or you can hire an attorney, but they're not for free. And then the third element, it's just kind of like baked into everything I was just describing, is that the fangs come out, the claws come out. There's money on the table. There's assets to be had. And not everybody holds hands and sings kumbaya when splitting this stuff up. It can get nasty. And the nastier it gets, generally speaking, the longer probate will take and the richer the attorneys will get.
Well, I know you mentioned, hey, maybe you want to take advantage of like the housing market right away and sell the house. But I think even a more immediate need might be getting into some of the money put aside for funeral costs. And that's really a time is of the essence. And you might not be able to access that right away, right?
Right. So a will is better than nothing, Jess, but it's not that much better because it doesn't really afford much in the way of protection or flexibility for the people that are left behind. So generally speaking, we highly recommend that people go a little bit further than that and they consider getting for themselves some sort of a trust.
Okay, so let's talk about that because I know there's a few different types of trusts that they have out there. So put on, your best attorney Liz Nolan hat there. What's the alternatives just to doing a will?
Yeah, so if it's not already clear by the disclaimers for this video, Jess and we're not attorneys, but we work very closely with one. And of course, what you do for estate planning is a very close complement to everything else that you're working on from a financial planning perspective. Fundamentally, what a trust is, and this is probably the most boring way of describing it, but it is accurate, it's an entity. And entities don't die. People do. So an example I give quite often is consider Walmart as an example. Sam Walton, who started the thing, died ages ago, but it's not like Walmart had to be buried with him. It could continue on without him. And so similarly, whether it's a business or a trust, these things they're legal entities and they can survive you after your own death. So when I create a trust, I'm literally creating a legal entity that I can place assets into. And so I can place a home into trust. I can place certain types of financial accounts into trust.
Like your checking account, because sometimes checks will say like the living trust of so-and-so, something like that, right?
That's right. And so one of the primary advantages of having a trust is that any assets that are placed inside of it do not have to be probated.
Wow.
Because again, the assets are owned by a legal entity that does not die.
I'm going to put on my nerd hat here for a second. Maybe it's a pointy wizard's hat or something like that. But I like to think of a trust as like a magical like box. And like whatever you put inside of there, be it like checking accounts or other type of retirement accounts maybe you have, home, whatever you do, is like once you close it, it's like protected from probate, right?
It's not a bad way of thinking about it. Now, of course, there's a lot of different trusts that are out there. There's revocable, there's irrevocable. There are some that are designed to control what amount of spending can happen after your death. There are certain types of trusts that have charitable aims as well. I don't think the purpose of this video is to dissect all the primary elements of a trust. I would say that first and foremost, a good trust starts with helping your family avoid probate. That's number one. Another big thing that we see people aim to do through the creation of trusts is to avoid certain types of tax. Okay. So if you can save a couple bucks there to boot, all the better. That's where most people stop. And just where at Arcadia, we encourage people to go a little bit further. So where people stop is they'll say, hey, you know what? I don't even have to watch any more of this video. I don't have to talk to you guys. I already learned about this ages ago. I have a trust in place. I have 3 kids. After I'm gone, my trust just splits everything 3 ways.
Uh-oh.
Done deal. Okay?
You think it's a done deal?
So I read through your trust. I look through all the pages of it, and every single thing just says, hey, yeah, I've got 3 kids. I love them equally. Everybody gets their third.
Mm-hmm.
The problem with the trust like that is that it ignores the fact that human beings tend to have very human problems.
And they make human messes. Maybe that's what that mess was on the ground.
So the way we've always worded it is, if you've got 3 kids, what are the odds that one of them is a knucklehead?
Or that you love them all equally.
No, what do I mean by knucklehead? Knucklehead is a catch-all for some sort of special circumstance where throwing money into the middle of that circumstance might actually cause problems for that person as opposed to just be received benevolently. So take as an example, a knucklehead could be somebody who struggles holding down work.
Uh-huh.
A knucklehead could be somebody who's always dating the wrong kind of person. On a more serious note, these are people who sometimes either have mental health issues, right? They might have physical handicaps. Sometimes throwing money into a situation where people are struggling with, say, mental health or career directives, or they have a bad marriage, throwing money into the middle of situations like that can be a really bad idea.
Sure. And it doesn't mean that you shouldn't take your money and divide it equally amongst your 3 kids if that's what you want to do. Totally support that. But they might all handle that inheritance a little bit different. So then I think you can take it a step further and put some conditions into place, right?
Yeah. So different attorneys will call these different things. There's conditional trust, there's incentive trust. Remember, there's no uniformity to this. Sometimes attorneys create their own language or descriptors for this. But fundamentally, what we're talking about here are rules, terms, and conditions under which your beneficiaries can either spend the money or even inherit it in the first place.
This stuff actually gets me kind of excited. I know that you've coined around here like finger wagging from the grave, right? It's like after you've passed on, being like, okay, here's your inheritance, but you got to do, a list of things. I think I'm going to make my kids do like an amazing race or something.
Well, you go up to the average mom or dad and say, hey, listen, if your kid came up to you right now, it doesn't matter how old your kid is, 20 years old, 40 years old, they come up to you and they say, hey, dad, can I have 500 grand? You'd be like, beat it, sucker. I'm not giving you that kind of money. Like, what do you even need it for? But if you die, right, a lot of times people will say, hey, I'm worth $1 million and I've got 2 kids, so they each get 500 grand. So you are going to just give them a wild sum of money at some point, but while living, you wouldn't have done it. So why do we do it at death? It's kind of a strange thing, right?
Sure. So what are some of the more common conditions you see people putting into trust?
The sky's the limit. I mean, some of the more common stuff that you'll see is, hey, you can only spend 5% of your inheritance annually, so you don't burn through it too quickly. Or there'll be certain types of trusts for people who have bad relationships or marriages, such that if that marriage or relationship dissolves, money doesn't go to the in-law who's leaving the family. So we'll see trusts like that. I've seen some really creative stuff that I think is pretty cool. An example would be for every dollar that comes out of the trust, 10 cents of it must go to charity.
That's nice.
And that's a way of disincentivizing people just to, continue to be, mindful of others or to kind of live out your values after you're gone.
Mm-hmm.
A thing that I think is fantastic that I've seen, oftentimes people want to skip the next generation because their kids in a lot of cases are better off than they are. And they'll say, I just want the money to go to my grandkids and pay for college tuition. But I think it's a pretty bad idea to just rain money on 18 and 19-year-olds, right?
Right.
A good conditional trust would say, hey, this money might pay for your education, but the trustee is going to look at your report card every semester.
Ooh.
And you'll get $1,000 for every A and $500 for every B. And for anything that's C or lower, your money's getting donated to the Ronald McDonald Foundation, right?
So I think that's really cool too, because you might think like, oh, well, if I fail it, no big deal. I'll just take it again next semester, but you have to pay for it again. So if you have this inheritance, you're like, yeah, the inheritance would just pay for it, but not if you don't study.
Good trust, you're either incentivizing behavior that you would otherwise like to see while you were living, right? Or you can put controls around people if they struggle with anything, just like managing money or relationships, whatever. The idea being, you said it, Jess, we call it finger wagging from the grave. If you would police some of this activity while alive, you can do much of that same stuff while dead, so long as your wishes are recorded in a trust like we just described.
I think one of the coolest things I've seen is that you had to volunteer like 100 hours each year because like these individuals are very charitable and they want to make sure they're passing that on to like future generations as well. So in order to get that, you had some mandated volunteer hours put in there, which is pretty cool.
You can be as creative as you want. Some states have certain limitations with what amount of requirements you can place on people, what's fair and reasonable, et cetera, et cetera. But the idea generally being is if you have a couple good ideas in mind, it's not that difficult to put them into practice.
Okay, so you got the trust set up. You have maybe some conditions. Maybe it's nothing too crazy. Who's policing all this? Who's adjudicating this trust?
It's probably the messiest part of the whole mess conversation that's generally overlooked, and that's who's in charge, and that's the trustee.
Oh?
And I think what a lot of people think to themselves is, well, this is a great honor to be my trustee. You're going to be in charge of my stuff after I'm gone.
It sounds like how you would like knight somebody. Like you get down on a knee and I put my sword on your shoulder and I've knighted you my trustee. You're welcome.
Yes. I mean, if you want to be that dramatic about it, we could try to get you a sword for the kids, but
I absolutely want to be that dramatic about it.
Yeah. So oftentimes people, they elect their eldest child or the
responsible one.
The responsible one. Or sometimes the kids are too young. So you pick, your brother or, your sister because you assume, hey, like they think a lot like me, or at least they know my wishes really well. I think what people forget, Jess, is being a trustee is a tremendous amount of work. It's a humongous burden more than it is an honor, right? After you're gone, let's just list for a second all the things that a trustee generally is going to be primarily responsible for, if not directly, at least indirectly. Okay. So we've gone through some of this, right? In our families and lives. Somebody has to take care of the funeral. Sometimes people have to wrap up whatever was happening with the hospital. We have to start calling insurance companies to put in claims. We have to call Social Security. We have to call the newspaper. We have to start calling friends and family. Afterwards, there's insurance claims to be made. We have to go down to the bank, and we have to go down to the various financial institutions and put in claims against all the outstanding stuff that's out there. We're going to do the last tax return. Somebody's going to clean the house. Somebody's going to sell the house. Someone's going to remove all the junk from the garage. I mean, I'm just getting warmed up here. You're talking about, in some cases, hundreds of hours of work.
I was getting all excited to be named trustee, like, oh, they picked me. Now it sounds like I don't want any of this responsibility.
And nobody gets anything from the trust. You're the administrator until you're good and ready to adjudicate it all.
So then you might have like a handful of siblings calling you up being like, why haven't you cleaned out the house yet? Who's doing this?
What's taking so long? What do you have against me? I think that you're probably pocketing some of dad's money. So all of a sudden the threats come out, the inquisition comes out, what's going on? So really the trustee becomes a lightning rod for not only a lot of work, but a lot of stress, sometimes a lot of family angst. It is not an easy role. I often call it with clients the world's most thankless job. You're trying to do something really nice for a deceased relative or parent. It's often somebody very, very close to you. But the amount of work that you have to do, the amount of stress that you have to deal with, sometimes the amount of drama that you have to deal with as it unfolds is a lot. And in a lot of cases, I wouldn't place all of that on my worst enemy.
Right.
Never mind one of my kids.
Do you get paid as a trustee or executor to do any of this stuff?
You can, and I often recommend it. People tend to hesitate with this, but I say, hey, listen, if you're going to ask one of your kids to go through all this work, you can write it into your trust that are entitled to some sort of an hourly rate so they get a little bit more than their other siblings in recognition for the additional work that they're doing. I don't think that that's something that's like outlandish to have either them to expect to receive, or like, if you even want to think of like, are they entitled to it? I would say so. They're putting in the work.
So what if you go, to your kids or your siblings or whomever, and you say, hey, great news, I want you to be my trustee. And they say, heck no, thanks anyways. Or maybe you're a single individual and you don't have any, family, but you still want, to put a trust together. You want stuff to happen. Who do you go to then?
A lot of people are unaware that whether you have a willing volunteer or not, you can elect to have a professional trustee. That's generally somebody like an attorney who will fill this administrative role for you. Most people's initial reactions are, whoa, I don't want somebody outside of the family being in charge of what's going on. First of all, being in charge doesn't mean you can do whatever you want with the money. You are bound as a fiduciary to honor what's written into the trust and to give the money or the assets to those that are entitled to it through the beneficiary designations. You can't just go starting to pocket that money yourself. You would be committing a crime. You'd be violating your own fiduciary agreement. So assuming you find a reputable nearby, say, law firm or a couple of good attorneys, they'll usually fill this role for you, which leads to the second objection. Well, they're going to cost money.
Sure. Less money to give to the kids or the charity or whatever I want.
Having done this for 20 years, I've seen so many people become trustees. And there's like before and after pictures of the president before they were in office versus what happens when they like
age 20 years.
Yeah, like remember Obama had like black hair like when he went into office and he came out like just like
all white
hair like on the top of his dome, right? It's the same thing kind of sometimes with trustees. They do so much work over such a short period of time that on the other side of it, they just look like they've been wrung out, right? I would gladly have my estate pay a third party to prevent them from going through that stress, right? It also does more than what you might expect. I mean, yes, at first blush, it's sparing them from a lot of work and agony. And I think that's a good thing, right? But what it might also do is preserve some of the family unity that can get disrupted in a process like this. So say, as an example, people are bickering about, when's the house going to be sold or what kind of asking price are we going for? Two siblings might jaw about that for 20 different hours over the course of several weeks, just arguing and debating that topic. If you were to contact the professional trustee who's on the clock,
right,
and it says, hey, fellas, like, I don't actually care
you
when
hear the tick, 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 tick.
you sell this house or for how much. I'm charging you $300 an hour just to
Right.
listen to this.
Yeah, I'll sit here and listen to you all day.
People might hop to it more quickly, find accordance or agreement more quickly with each other. I think it sometimes just speeds people through the process in a stronger, healthier way if there is a disinterested third party just saying, hey, listen, the sooner you can find mutual agreement on this, the sooner we'll get through the process, the less that you're going to pay me, the more that you're going to keep for yourselves. So I love the idea of a professional trustee because it keeps the burden off of the people that you care about, and it keeps the lightning rod stuff away from people inside of the family. Just put all that on a third party, pay them a couple $1,000s to deal with it. I think that's money well spent, but your results may vary.
Sure. So you might want a professional trustee. You might want to select somebody that you know. Where do you get started?
You just have to start. I mean, I think a lot of times, especially if you're consuming a video like this, you say to yourself, I didn't know a will guaranteed probate. I didn't know there were different types of trusts or that you could add conditions to them. I didn't know that being a trustee was a huge burden. If you said, I don't know more than once or twice, that's indicative that there's big things in your blind spot. That's okay. We can't be an expert at everything, but the very next move I would make is to go and get some help, get a consult, talk to a series of professionals at Arcadia. This is what we do as the family office for the millionaire next door, is try to get people to understand what's important to plan for in advance, maybe what lurks in the blind spot. And once we identify all those opportunities, now you can get educated and start putting some ideas into action.
It is kind of cool having a family office because our clients will come in here to do financial planning, sit down with estate planning attorney, get the tax professionals involved. And a lot of times our clients will bring in their kids, their adult children, that to let them know what's going to happen. What does it look like? Not wait for it to be a surprise.
Yeah, I'm a big proponent of making sure that the beneficiaries are involved a whole lot sooner than later, because I think it gives them an appreciation for the work that they have ahead of them. And it could also involve them in the process so there's no bad blood later, there's no confusion or ignorance. I think it's just healthier for families to go through this process together. And so having a family office obviously facilitates that, which is pretty nice.
Right. I think the best part of inheritance isn't the money. It's having a family that still talks to each other. So if you haven't done your estate planning, get started today. If you liked this video and it helped you, watch another one. And don't forget to hit subscribe.